Gasper, what's your take on Maye's usage last night and his usage so far this camp?
Yeah, I didn't love it. 64 offensive snaps, not including penalties, and he played 6 of them. I just don't think that's the best use of their time in these preseason games. And this was kind of one of my fears originally with Zappe on the roster, is that there's that temptation. I don't think it's indicative of anything they want to do with Zappe, but it's just a body that's there that prevents you from putting other bodies in the game or forcing you to put other bodies in the game. And I understand they want to protect Drake Maye to a degree, but he talked last night about the idea of, it was just great to be out on the field and in a game situation. There's an acclimation that goes into this, and there was value in it for him to have more than 6 snaps, even if he had just handed off for another 6 snaps. It's being in the huddle. It's getting acclimated to the stadium and where the play clock is and getting the calls and seeing everything at game speed. I just don't understand how that was the best use of their time or development time with Drake Maye. And then the other thing I'll say is, from the few times, the couple of times I've been down there, and then from what I read, it doesn't seem like Drake Maye has gotten in practice a ton of reps with the first team offensive line. And so why is that the rationale for why he has to come out of the game? It's like, well, the first team offensive line came out, so he can't stay in the game. Well, if that's the case, then shouldn't you be giving him more reps with that offensive line during practice? I just didn't think this was a great plan. And we can talk about this a little more instead of me just, filibustering on here. But I feel like the plan might be indicative of a bigger issue, which is because you have a coach who's not experienced on the offensive side of the ball. He's just kind of outsourcing all of this and taking the word of the offensive coaches. And I don't know if that's the way to go with this.
Okay, I definitely want to pick that up. Now, Gasper, you're calling me. I just want to make clear that now Gasper's calling me. So we're glitching all over the place. Gasper, the offensive coach thing, I'm sorry. You're preaching to the choir on that one. I felt that way from the start. And I always defer to offensive coaches anyway, but especially in this kind of situation, ground zero, rookie quarterback. And I know D'Amico Ryans certainly feels like they're getting along there, but he had an offensive coordinator in his hip pocket that he knows, trusts, works with, came right from, Adam's rib, if you will, from that system out west. This is kind of different. This is more of a hodgepodge, pieced together staff. And I had issues about it from the start. And I don't know. I think you're sort of hitting on it early on, some of the concerns people had about it.
Yeah, I just wonder if Jerod feels comfortable at this point, pushing back on the development plan and the way the snaps are mapped out for the quarterbacks, or is it just going to be they've decided organizationally that Van Pelt and McAdoo and TC McCartney will map this out and they're going to be in charge of it mostly, and this is going to be the way that it goes. And there were quotes from today's teleconference that to me were a little bit, I don't want to say them alarming, but more like telling in terms of, Mayo. It's not Mayo saying AVP and I came to this conclusion, or I told AVP and Ben, this is what I would like to do. It's more sort of along the lines of to me, it sounds more sort of along the lines of this is the plan they came up with and that I signed off on, which I don't know if that's ideal. I wonder if he were not a first year coach and a guy whose experience is on the defensive side of the ball, if he would have pushed back more last night about what this plan is and about what all the individual development plans are for these quarterbacks and whether you need to have 4 quarterbacks on the roster at this point. Because again, if you have individual development plans for 4 guys, that's time that to me should be going to Maye and Milton and Brissett and not wasting any time on Zappe, who you already know what he is, and you've already sort of made your decision that he's not a part of your future.
Well, Chris, what I would
Murray, any thoughts? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, what I would say to that is, and I know I've heard this from people about why is Zappe here? He's taking snaps away from X, Y, and Z. That's not the way it's gone in practice. Basically it is Jacoby Brissett, Drake Maye, and then Zappe and Milton split the scraps. They alternate on who gets it. So it's really like they're operating with 3 quarterbacks, and Joe Milton getting more snaps now is not going to matter. He's a long-term play no matter what you saw last night and how, Bishop or Malik Cunningham and Zappy, how horned up you were over what you saw last night. It's a long-term play with Joe Milton. One thing I wanted to bring up, and I wanted to get Chris's reaction. So I rarely believe anybody at a podium, especially a coach. Like, no matter what they say, like, I don't there's always some sort of ulterior motive, whether they're protecting somebody or whatnot. But the thing that alarms me in this case with Jerod Mayo and what he said about Drake Maye is that we see on the practice field they are protecting Drake. Like, he has never been with the starters in practice. And then Mayo also said multiple times, he has said, when he's ready, we'll do X, Y, and Z. That means that not only are we seeing on the field he's not ready, the coach is saying he's not ready, and we should believe him.
Yeah, that's a good point, Greg. I mean, that is a good point. And I guess the question becomes, how much of his not being ready is on Drake Maye, and there's nothing you could do about it. There are limitations there, maybe from a learning standpoint, or just he's not picking it up as quickly as they'd like. And how much of that is on the development plan that has been instituted by the coaches? And have they deviated at all from that plan if they feel like he's not picking it up as quickly as they would like? And that's something, I've kind of talked about in terms of just what I've seen from the couple of times I've been down there, that at times he looks like a little robotic. And there are things that need to be fixed. There's no question about it. But are they maybe throwing a little too much at him at one time to try and fix? We want to fix the footwork, and we want to fix the throwing mechanics, particularly on the short stuff. And we want to get him acclimated to an NFL offense, and we're going to go over the processing with him, pre-snap and post-snap. And I know the center sets the protection, so he's not doing that, but there still is some pre-snap that he has to sort of go through to know what's going to happen here. And it is, when you're trying to change the mental and the physical at the same time, would you maybe be better off just slicing this up into smaller bites for him and doing it that way? So you're right about him not being ready. I guess the question is, how much of that is on Drake Maye and how much of that is on the coaches in terms of not finding a way to get him up to speed?
Go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to say, my read on it from being out there, I think it's a little bit of both. From talking to NFL coaches who have experience with quarterbacks, 3.5 months. It should not take you 3.5 months to get a solid base as far as footwork for a quarterback. So to me, that means that Drake himself is a bit behind.
Murray?
I mean, Chris, this will come as no surprise to you. It took me all of one preseason game to be out on Alex Van Pelt. I put it on the coaches. And so do you get any impression that his hiring in the first place, I mean, he wasn't buzzed about throughout the league, rather than one of these Sean McVay tree guys, your buzzy offensive minds that look like one of the guys from the Chainsmokers, as you like to say, was almost it was almost on purpose because someone like Van Pelt can't possibly outshine Jerod Mayo. In other words, like, ownership looked at this and like, well, this is Gerod's time. We can't have one of these tight pants offensive guys from the Sean McVay tree come in here and all of a sudden everyone's talking about them.
I think, and Greg would know this more than I would, I think it was just more that, Jerod didn't maybe have as many connections on the offensive side across the league. Obviously, Nick Caley was one, but Elliott Wolf had more connections. And I think he leaned on Elliott Wolf and some other people in that building to help him put the staff together. And Elliott's comfortable with Alex Van Pelt, who is certainly a competent offensive coordinator. I mean, he has experience in the position. And now, is he someone who I think headlines an offense and you're excited because he's your offensive coordinator? No, that's not who I think he is, but he's kind of your baseline offensive coordinator, and they were obviously comfortable bringing him in. And what I'm not comfortable with, though, you bring him in, is I'm not comfortable with sort of, and I'm not saying this is happening, but I'm not comfortable if they're basically saying we're going to entirely entrust the development of Drake Maye to you. And we're going to be in a situation where Mayo almost has to kind of defer to you in terms of what the quarterback development plan is. I don't like that one bit. That's not going to get it done for me. If I'm doing that with an offensive coordinator, then he better be a brand name. He better be a Shanahan or a McVay or a guy that's been an NFL head coach before and gotten bounced. Let's say Mike McCarthy gets bounced from Dallas. It better be somebody like that if I'm turning all the development over to an offensive guy and basically saying, hey, this guy's like head coach offense, and the new head coach is essentially going to defer to him on the quarterback development plan.
Preach! I was saying this crap from day one. Preach that. I mean, my God. It's obvious to like a dope like me who knows nothing. This is completely underwhelming hires for the roles that they have to fill. Like, so obvious to me.
If you like that clip, check out more videos from Felger and Mazz here. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.